The corner office of Wilson Global Enterprises gleamed in the morning light as I adjusted my CEO nameplate. 6 years ago in this same building, my father had called me into his much smaller office to fire me from my junior analyst position. "You'll never succeed in finance, Alexandra," he'd said, sliding my termination papers across his desk. "You don't have what it takes. Maybe try something simpler." Now, at 32, I controlled one of the largest financial empires in the country. My recent string of acquisitions had caught everyone by surprise, especially the struggling Morgan & Sons finance, where my father still worked as a senior vice president, unaware that his company was about to become my latest subsidiary. "Ms. Wilson," my assistant Patricia's voice came through the intercom. "The final paperwork for the Morgan & Sons acquisition has arrived." I smiled, remembering my father's dismissive words. After he'd fired me, I'd changed my mother's maiden name, Wilson, and started from scratch. A small investment firm that grew into something nobody, especially my father, could have predicted. "The merger meeting is scheduled for 2 p.m., Patricia continued. "All Morgan & Sons executives will be present, including Senior VP Richard Foster." My father. He still didn't know. None of them did. The merger had been negotiated through intermediaries. The true identity of Wilson Global CO kept carefully hidden. They thought they were meeting an old money patriarch named Wilson, not the failure they'd fired 6 years ago. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. "Your father's nervous about meeting his new boss today. Be kind to him, Alexandra." Mom was the only one who knew my secret. She'd been there the day Dad fired me, had watched me rebuild myself from nothing. When I'd made my first million, she'd cried. When I'd hit $1 billion, she just smiled and said, "I always knew." I opened my laptop to review Morgan & Sons financials. The company had been floundering for years, making exactly the mistakes I'd warned them about when I was a junior analyst. Their rejection of digital transformation, their resistance to emerging markets, everything I'd highlighted in my final presentation before being fired. "Patricia," I called through the intercom, "is everything ready for the meeting?" "Yes, Ms. Wilson. The contracts are prepared, the boardroom is set, and security has been briefed. Also, your father's old termination letter has been framed as requested." That letter had become my motivation, fuel for every late night and early morning. I'd kept it in my desk drawer as I built Wilson Global piece by piece, a reminder of why I couldn't fail. The morning passed quickly as I finalized the acquisition details. By 1:30, Patricia reported that the Morgan & Sons executives had arrived and were waiting in the conference room. "They're quite impressed with the building," she noted with a slight smirk. "Especially Mr. Foster. He mentioned that his daughter used to work in finance but couldn't handle it." I stood, smoothing my Armani suit. "Let them wait a few more minutes. I want to make an entrance they'll never forget." Through the conference room's glass walls, I could see them, 6 men in expensive suits, my father among them, all looking nervous. They had no idea that their company's fate rested in the hands of someone they'd once dismissed. My mother's last text arrived. "Remember, success is the best revenge." At exactly 2 p.m. I gathered my files and nodded to Patricia. It was time to show my father exactly what his failure of a daughter had become. "Ready to announce you, Ms. Wilson," Patricia said, her hand on the conference room door. I thought about the last 6 years, the late nights, the strategic plays, the careful hiding of my identity. All leading to this moment. "Let's show them what success really looks like," I said, stepping forward as Patricia opened the door. The room fell silent as I entered. 6 pairs of eyes widened in shock. But I only cared about one reaction, my father's face going completely white as he recognized his new boss. His coffee cup slipped from his hand, shattering on the polished floor. "Gentlemen," I said calmly, taking my seat at the head of the table. "I'm Alexandra Wilson, CEO of Wilson Global Enterprises. And as of today, your new owner." The silence in the conference room was deafening. Coffee from my father's shattered cup spread slowly across the polished floor, but no one moved to clean it up. All eyes were fixed on me, the woman they'd dismissed as incapable 6 years ago. This must be some mistake," stuttered Harold Barnes, Morgan & Sons CFO. "We were told we'd be meeting with Mr. Wilson." "There is no Mr. Wilson," I replied, opening my laptop. "Wilson Global Enterprises was built by me from the ground up. I turned to my father, whose face had progressed from white to gray. Isn't that right, Dad? The other executive's heads snapped toward him so fast I heard neck joints crack. Dad, repeated Thomas Chin, the operations director. Richard, this is your... Alexandra, my father finally managed, his voice barely a whisper. You're Wilson Global. I pulled up the acquisition contract on the room's main screen. The same daughter you fired for lacking business instinct. The one who didn't have what it takes. Would you like to see your exact words? I nodded to Patricia, who distributed copies of my old termination letter to everyone at the table. In light of your inability to grasp basic financial concepts, Barnes read aloud, then stopped, looking uncomfortable. Please continue, I said smoothly. I believe the next part is particularly interesting. Your continued employment would be a liability to Morgan & Sons. Perhaps a less demanding career path would be more suitable for your limited capabilities. My father seemed to shrink in his chair as his colleagues read his words from 6 years ago. I let the moment stretch, remembering all the nights I'd read that letter, using the anger and hurt as fuel to build my empire. Now, I continued, pulling up Morgan & Sons' financial reports. Let's discuss why you're all here. Your company is failing. The same issues I identified 6 years ago have finally caught up with you. I highlighted the declining revenue charts, the missed opportunities, the failed strategies. Everything I'd warned them about in my final presentation as a junior analyst. Digital transformation, emerging markets, algorithmic trading, all opportunities you dismissed. Now you're losing millions while your competitors, many of whom are already Wilson Global subsidiaries, are thriving. But your acquisition offer, Thomas Chin interjected, it's well above market value. Because I'm not just buying your company, gentlemen. I'm buying the satisfaction of proving every dismissive comment, every condescending smile, every doubt about my capabilities completely wrong. Patricia entered with a new stack of documents. The complete restructuring plan I'd prepared. The same basic strategy I'd proposed 6 years ago, updated and expanded. Your choice is simple, I continued. Accept the merger and keep your jobs under my leadership and new protocols, or decline and watch your company collapse within 6 months. Either way, I win. You planned this, my father finally spoke, his voice hoarse. All of it. Wilson Global's strategic acquisitions, the market pressure on our company, the timing. I learned from the best, Dad. You taught me that business is ruthless. That only the strong survive. I smiled, remembering his words. Though I doubt this is what you meant when you told me to find my place in the world. The room fell silent again as the executives studied the documents before them. 6 years of failure versus my offer of salvation, with a healthy dose of humble pie. The terms are generous, Barnes admitted, looking through the contract. But the restructuring plan is non-negotiable, I finished. You need my company more than we need yours. Your shareholders know it. Your board knows it. And now you know it. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. Your father just texted me. He's in shock. Be merciful. I looked at my father, seeing not the intimidating man who'd fired me, but someone who'd been proven catastrophically wrong. His hands trembled as he reached for the contract. One more thing, I added, pressing a button on my laptop. The screen changed to show a familiar document. I'm going to need my termination letter back. The original copy. I have a special frame waiting for it in my office. The other executives shifted uncomfortably as my father nodded slowly, defeated. It's in my office. Patricia will collect it. Along with everything else from your office. His head snapped up. What? Oh, did I forget to mention? As part of the restructuring, all senior management positions are being reviewed. Starting with Senior Vice President of Strategic Development. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. The position he deemed me unqualified for would now be filled by someone of my choosing. You're firing me? He asked, his voice barely audible. I stood, smoothing my suit. No, Dad. I'm giving you the opportunity to explore a less demanding career path. One better suited to your limited capabilities. The next hour passed in a blur of signatures and legal formalities. One by one, the executives signed the merger documents, their earlier confidence replaced by a quiet acceptance of their new reality. My father signed last, his hand shaking as he passed the contract back to Patricia. Before we conclude, I announced, I want to address the elephant in the room. Yes, I'm Richard Foster's daughter. He fired me 6 years ago. And yes, I built Wilson Global specifically to prove him wrong. I paused, letting my words sink in. But this isn't about revenge. I clicked to the next slide, revealing Wilson Global's impressive portfolio. This is about success. About vision. About seeing opportunities that others dismiss. Standing, I walked around the table, my heels clicking on the polished floor. Morgan & Sons will be completely restructured. Those who can adapt will stay. Those who can't, I glanced at my father, will be given their chance to explore other opportunities. Alexandra, my father finally spoke, his voice strained. I was wrong. Yes, you were, I replied calmly. About many things, but mostly about me. Patricia entered with a sleek folder. The press release is ready, Ms. Wilson. Shall I proceed? Wait, my father interjected. The press, everyone will know. That you fired your own daughter who then became your boss? I smiled. That's not just news, Dad. That's a headline. The other executives gathered their things, eager to escape the tension. As they filed out, Thomaston paused. For what it's worth, Ms. Wilson, your original proposal from 6 years ago. I voted to keep you. After they left, only my father remained, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. What happens now? He asked. I pressed the intercom. Patricia, please bring in the other envelope. She returned with a single document. Not another termination letter, but something else entirely. A choice, I explained, sliding it across the table. You can leave with a generous severance package, or... I tapped the document. You can take an entry-level position in our Asia division. Start fresh. Learn the business the right way. He stared at the paper, then at me. You'd give me a second chance? After everything. Mom always said success is the best revenge, I said quietly. But real success means knowing when to stop fighting. Just then my phone buzzed with a message from her. Dinner tonight? Your treat, CO. I looked over at my father, still staring at the signed document in front of him, his future laid bare. The Asia division comes with a mentor program, I added. Every junior analyst gets one-on-one guidance from a senior exec. You'll be reporting to me. His eyes widened. You'd teach me everything you should have learned years ago. Everything you once dismissed from me. I gathered my files. You have until tomorrow to decide. As I walked toward the door, he called after me. Alexandra, I'm sorry. For everything. I paused, then turned. Prove it. Not with words, with action. That's what leadership really looks like. Walking back to my office, I passed the photo wall. Images of Wilson Global's climb from a single rented space to international expansion. Each frame marked a chapter in the story that turned Richard Foster's disappointment into a CEO. Patricia met me at my office door. Your mother's on line 1. And the press release, it's gone viral. I picked up the phone, gazing out over the skyline. Hi, Mom. It's done. He knows now. Everything's going to change. On my desk, beside my CEO nameplate, sat an empty picture frame. It had once been reserved for the termination letter that started it all. But maybe, just maybe, it was meant for something else. Something earned. Dinner tonight? I asked her. Let's go to that little Italian place. The one where Dad told me to give up on finance. I own it now. The sun dipped lower behind the city, casting gold across the glass towers. Tomorrow would bring new business challenges and maybe a new chapter in the Foster family. But tonight, I'd be more than a seat. I'd be a daughter and proof that success isn't just survival. It's transformation. The next morning, the headlines exploded. Wilson Global CEO revealed. Fired daughter now father's boss. Alexandra Wilson, from rejection to global powerhouse. Morgan & Sons swallowed by their former junior analyst. By 9 a.m., Patricia had declined over a dozen interview requests. My phone hadn't stopped ringing. Ms. Wilson, she said through the intercom, your father's here. He has the envelope. Send him in. He walked in slower than before, less pride, more humility. In his hands were two things. My 6-year-old termination letter and the signed contract for his new position. I read everything about you last night, he said softly. What you built. What you changed. All the things I said would fail. Worked. I motioned to the chair. And He held up the contract. I want to earn it. I want to learn. From you. It won't be easy, I said. Shared cubicle. Long hours. No exceptions. Like you had to. Right then, Mom burst in with a newspaper in hand. Have you seen this? They're calling you the Phoenix of Finance. She froze at the sight of Dad. Oh, Richard. It's okay, I said. Dad just accepted an entry-level position. Asia Division. Her eyes went wide. You're staying? As her employee. He nodded. If she'll have me. I've got a lot to learn. The intercom crackled again. Ms. Wilson, the board is ready for your integration presentation. I stood. Dad, your flight to Shanghai leaves tomorrow. Patricia will coordinate. Owen. I handed him a small box. Your new business cards, Junior Analyst Foster. He opened the box and stared at the title. Said everything. Thank you, Alexandra. I mean, Ms. Wilson. One more thing, I said, holding up the empty frame from my desk. This was meant for the letter you fired me with. But if you do well, maybe it'll hold something else. Your first performance review is in 6 months. Make it frame-worthy. As he left, Mom lingered. You're really giving him a second chance? No, I said. I'm giving him what he never gave me, an opportunity to prove himself fairly. My phone buzzed again. Thomas Chen's message. Your story inspired the team. Thank you for showing us what we almost lost. I looked out at the skyline again. Mom, dinner tonight? She smiled knowingly. The same Italian place? The one where Dad told me to quit. Yes. But tonight we celebrate what happens when you don't listen to doubt. Outside, workers replaced the Morgan & Sons signage with Wilson Global. A new era was beginning, for the company and for us. My father would finally learn what I'd always known. Success isn't about power or pride. It's about vision, effort, and the strength to rise when the world counts you out. I pressed the intercom. Patricia, set up weekly mentoring sessions with Junior Analyst Foster. Pause. Let's show him what his failed daughter can really teach him.
The snow was falling softly outside as I placed the last ornament on the Christmas tree. This would be my first Christmas without James, and the emptiness of our family mansion felt overwhelming. My husband of 15 years had passed away 3 months ago, leaving me with memories, a broken heart, and though his family didn't know it yet, full ownership of everything he possessed. Emma, my mother-in-law Barbara's sharp voice cut through my reminiscing. Why are these new ornaments on the tree? Our family's antique decorations should be front and center. I turned to face her, forcing a polite smile. I thought we could mix in some of the ornaments James and I collected over the years. He always loved. James isn't here anymore, she interrupted, her voice cold. It's time things returned to the way they should be. Barbara had moved in 2 weeks after the funeral, claiming she needed to help me manage the house. My sister-in-law, Christine, followed a week later with her husband Tom, both suddenly very concerned about the family property. What they didn't know was that James had seen this coming. They'll try to push you out, he'd warned me during his final days. They never thought you were good enough for me, never accepted that I chose love over their society matches. Promise me you'll be ready. I promise, though at the time I thought he was being paranoid. Now, watching Barbara rearrange the Christmas tree to her liking, I understood his concerns all too well. The doorbell rang, probably the caterers for tomorrow's Christmas Eve dinner. Instead, I found myself face to face with Victoria, James's ex-fiancée from 20 years ago. My stomach dropped. Victoria, Barbara rushed forward, embracing her. I'm so glad you could make it. I stood frozen in the doorway. Make it for what? Christine appeared, smirking. For Christmas Eve dinner, of course. Maude thought it would be nice to have a proper family gathering. Family, the word stung. After 15 years of marriage, they still considered James' ex more family than me. Throughout the evening, I watched as they fawned over Victoria. She'd married well, they reminded me repeatedly. She was on the board of multiple charities. She understood tradition, understood their world in ways I never could. Remember when James was going to propose at the country club? Barbara sighed wistfully. Everything was planned so perfectly before. Well, before things changed. Before he met me, she meant. Before the son of old money fell for a scholarship student who valued love over social status. I excused myself to the kitchen, needing a moment alone. As I leaned against the counter, I heard their voices drifting in from the dining room. Poor James, Victoria's practiced sympathy carried clearly. Trapped in a marriage beneath his station. At least he's at peace now. The house feels wrong with her here, Christine added. All these common decorations, these middle-class touches. Mother, we have to do something. Already planned, dear, Barbara replied softly. The lawyers assure me that without a clear will, the property reverts to the family. We'll have her out by New Year's. I smiled despite myself. James had known exactly what they would do. Make them think they've won, he'd advised. Let them show their true colors. Then when the time is right. The next day, Christmas Eve, dawned bright and cold. Barbara spent the morning directing staff to prepare for the evening's party, while Christine and Victoria pored over old photo albums, loudly reminiscing about James's life before me. I stayed in the background, watching as more family friends arrived. Each new guest brought another pointed reminder that I didn't belong in their world. Around sunset, as the party was in full swing, Barbara clinked her glass for attention. Friends, family, she began, her voice carrying through the grand hall. This past year has been difficult for all of us. Losing James, she paused for effect, has left a void that can never be filled. But tonight, we begin the process of healing, of restoring things to their proper order. My heart pounded. This was it. Emma, she turned to me, her smile sharp as a knife. You've been accommodating during these past months, but now it's time for honesty. This house, this legacy, belongs to the Carter family. Surely you understand that you can't stay here. The room fell silent. Dozens of eyes turned to me, some pitying, most triumphant. Christine stepped forward, holding out an envelope. We've arranged for a modest apartment in town. Given your background, it should be more than adequate. I took the envelope without opening it. You need to leave tonight, Barbara continued. We've already had your things packed. Sure enough, I noticed several suitcases by the door. They planned this humiliation perfectly, throwing me out on Christmas Eve, in front of everyone who'd ever doubted my place in James's life. Now? I asked quietly. It's snowing outside. Gee outie. This is our hituasi now. Christine's composure finally cracked. You never belonged here anyway. Victoria placed a comforting hand on Barbara's shoulder. It's for the best, really. James would have wanted the house restored to its proper family. I looked around the room, at the tree James and I had decorated together every year, at the photographs they'd already started taking down, at the life we built that they were so eager to erase. Very well, I said calmly, picking up my coat. I'll go. Finally, she shows sense, Barbara announced to the room. Don't worry about the legal details, dear. Our lawyers will be in touch after the holidays. I paused at the door, turning back one last time. Merry Christmas, I said softly. I'll see you all very soon. Their laughter followed me out into the snow. What they didn't know, what James had arranged so carefully before his death, was about to change everything. As I drove through the snowy streets to the 5-star hotel where I'd already reserved the presidential suite, I made 2 calls. First, to Marcus Chen, James's personal lawyer for the past decade. They did it, I told him, exactly as James predicted. On Christmas Eve, Marcus sounded disgusted. Perfect timing, actually. I'll file first thing on the 26th. The video cameras caught everything. Every word, I confirmed. The security system James had installed last year had worked perfectly. The second call was to Detective Sarah Martinez. You got the evidence? She asked without preamble. Everything. Barbara's embezzlement from the family foundation, Christine's insurance fraud, all of it. James' records were very thorough. We'll move on the 26th, she promised. Merry Christmas, Emma. I ended the call as I pulled into the hotel's heated garage. A valet rushed forward to help with my bags. The real ones, packed with everything truly important, not the decoy suitcases they'd so thoughtfully prepared. In my suite, I opened my laptop to review the final pieces of James's plan. He'd spent his last months preparing for exactly this scenario, documenting every illegal transaction his family had hidden over the years, every scheme they'd used to maintain their prestigious image. They'll think they've won, he'd said. That's when they'll be most vulnerable, most likely to celebrate their victory by accessing the foundation's accounts, most likely to let their guard down. I smiled, remembering his determination even as his health failed. He'd known his family would try to erase me from his life, just as they tried to prevent our marriage years ago. What they didn't know was that James had quietly transferred everything to my name months before his death. The house, the business interests, the family foundation, all of it legally mine, all of it properly documented and witnessed. He'd also left me something else. Proof of years of financial misconduct by his beloved family, Barbara's systematic embezzlement from the family's charitable foundation, Christine's elaborate insurance scams. All of it carefully archived, ready to be revealed at the right moment. My phone buzzed with messages from their celebrations. Finally got rid of the gold digger. The house can be restored to its former glory. James would be so happy to see things put right. I screenshot each message, adding them to our evidence file. Let them celebrate. In 1 week, their world would come crashing down. As snow continued to fall outside my luxury suite, I raised a glass of James's favorite whiskey. "Merry Christmas, my love," I whispered. The show was about to begin. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a blur of careful preparation. While Barbara and her cohorts celebrated their victory at my expense, I worked with Marcus to set everything in motion. On December 26, just as planned, 2 things happened simultaneously. First, Marcus filed the official documentation of my ownership, complete with video evidence of their Christmas Eve performance. Second, Detective Martinez moved on the financial crimes evidence, freezing the foundation's accounts just as Barbara attempted to transfer a large year-end bonus to herself. My phone rang early on December 30th. It was Christine, her voice missing its usual condescension. "There must be some mistake," she began without preamble. "The foundation's accounts are frozen. Mother can't access anything." "No mistake," I replied calmly. "Just karma." "What did you do?" she hissed. "Me? Nothing. Your mother's creative accounting finally caught up with her. Oh, and Christine, those insurance claims you filed last year, investigators are very interested in those too." She hung up. Minutes later, Barbara called. "You spiteful little witch," she spat. "How dare you cause trouble with the foundation? Do you know who we are?" "I know exactly who you are," I answered. James knew too. "Why do you think he spent his last months documenting everything?" Silence. Then, "What do you want?" "Want? Nothing. I already have everything. The house, the foundation, the business interests. James transferred them all to me months ago. Legally, properly, irrevocably." I could hear her struggling to breathe. "You're lying. Check with your lawyers, though I should warn you. They might be busy today. Fraud investigations take up so much time." The next morning, I walked into the mansion, my mansion, with Marcus and a security team. Barbara, Christine, and Tom were waiting, along with their lawyer. "This is our family home." Barbara stood in the grand foyer, arms crossed. "You have no right." Marcus stepped forward, documents in hand. "Mrs. Carter has every right. Full ownership was transferred to her by your son on June 15th, with multiple witnesses present." "James would never." Christine protested. "Actually," I interrupted, "it was his idea. He knew exactly what you'd do after he was gone. The only surprise was how quickly you showed your true colors." Their lawyer reviewed the documents, his face growing progressively paler. "These are completely in order. Mrs. Carter owns everything." "Not everything," Barbara snapped. "The foundation is under investigation," Detective Martinez announced, walking in with several officers, along with certain insurance claims that don't quite add up. I watched as realization dawned on their faces. James hadn't just protected me, he gathered evidence of their crimes for years. "Mrs. Barbara Carter," Martinez continued, "we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of embezzlement and fraud." "This is ridiculous." Barbara looked around wildly. "Victoria, call Vincent." She meant Victoria's husband, a prominent judge. "Victoria's not coming," I smiled. "She's rather busy with her own legal troubles. Something about tax evasion." As the officers led Barbara away, Christine turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she begged, "you can't do this. We'll be ruined." "Like you tried to ruin me?" I asked quietly, throwing me out in the snow on Christmas Eve, packing my bags with old clothes while I wasn't looking. "We were grieving." Tom protested. "No," I corrected him, "you were gloating. There's a difference. The security cameras caught everything. Every cruel word, every smirking celebration." Over the next few hours, I watched as they packed their real belongings, under supervision of course. The proud Carter family reduced to loading their designer luggage into hired cars. As they prepared to leave, Barbara turned back one last time. "He was my son," she said brokenly. "Yes," I agreed. "And he spent his final months making sure you couldn't hurt me like you hurt him when he chose love over social status." After they left, I walked through the house, my house, remembering James's words during those final planning sessions. "They never forgave me for choosing you," Kate said. "Let them think they've won at first, then show them exactly why I fell in love with you, your strength, your intelligence, your ability to rise above their petty cruelty." The next few months brought waves of change. Barbara and Christine faced criminal charges. The society pages buzzed with scandal. Former friends scrambled to distance themselves. But something unexpected happened too. The foundation, under my leadership, actually began helping people instead of funding vanity projects. The business interests thrived without the burden of supporting Barbara's extravagant lifestyle. One year after that snowy Christmas Eve, I hosted a different kind of holiday party. The mansion was filled with people who worked for the foundation, beneficiaries of its programs, and friends who'd stood by me. The Christmas tree sparkled with a mix of antique ornaments and newer ones, each representing a memory or a hope for the future. James would have loved it. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Barbara and Christine had taken plea deals. They would avoid jail time but had to pay substantial fines and perform community service. Their society friends had already closed ranks against them. Later that evening, as the party wound down, I found a quiet moment in James's study. His photograph smiled down at me from above the fireplace. "You were right," I told him softly, "about everything." The next morning, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Victoria. "I was wrong about you," she wrote. "James chose better than any of us knew. The Foundation's new programs are actually making a difference. If you're willing, I'd like to help." I thought about it for a long time before replying. The adult literacy program needs volunteers. Tuesday evenings, don't be late. 2 years after being thrown out into the snow, I stood in the mansion's grand hall, watching as another Christmas tree was decorated. But this time, the ornaments told a different story of redemption, of justice, of turning pain into purpose. Barbara and Christine had moved to a small town in another state, their society connections and prestigious names now worthless. Tom had divorced Christine and remarried. Victoria, surprisingly, had become one of the Foundation's most dedicated volunteers. The mansion that they tried to take from me had become a place of real charity and genuine warmth. The fortune they'd abused was now serving the community. The name they'd been so proud of now stood for something truly worthwhile. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. The last appeal was denied. "It's really over." I smiled, touching the wedding ring I still wore. "They never understood, did they, James?" I whispered. "You didn't just leave me your possessions. You left me your strength, your integrity, and the power to make things right." The snow was falling outside, just like that Christmas Eve 2 years ago. But this time, instead of being forced out into the cold, I was exactly where I belonged, carrying on James's true legacy, not the superficial one his family had clung to. They thought throwing me out of the house was their victory. Instead, it had been the beginning of their downfall and my greatest triumph. As I watched the snow fall, I remembered something James had told me near the end. The best revenge isn't just proving them wrong, love. It's using their cruelty as a stepping stone to create something better than they could have imagined. Looking around at what his home, our home, had become, I knew we'd done exactly that. And somewhere, I was sure, James was smiling. The silence in the courtroom was deafening as Judge Harrison delivered my sentence. 5 years in federal prison for financial fraud I didn't commit. My brother Marcus sat in the gallery, his face a perfect mask of familial concern, but I could see the triumph in his eyes. "Ms. Rebecca Foster," the judge continued, "given the extent of the fraud and your apparent lack of remorse, I have no choice but to impose the maximum sentence. My name is Rebecca Foster, and at 32 years old, I was going to prison for my brother's crimes." "I'm so sorry, Becca," Marcus said afterward, catching me in the hallway before the marshals led me away. "If there was anything I could do..." I met his gaze steadily. "There's plenty you could do, Marcus. You could tell the truth." He placed a hand on my shoulder, the gesture meant to look comforting to observers. "The evidence is clear, sis. the signatures, the transfers. All of it leads to you. Maybe prison will give you time to reflect on your choices. The evidence was clear, perfectly clear. Every fraudulent transaction, every forged document, every stolen dollar had been meticulously crafted to point to me. Marcus had spent 2 years building his scheme, using my position as CFO of Foster Financial to mask his theft. What he didn't know was that I'd been watching him the entire time. It started when I noticed small discrepancies in our company's books. Nothing major, just numbers that didn't quite add up. Most people would have written it off as accounting errors, but I'd spent my life being careful, methodical, precise. These weren't mistakes. I began documenting everything, secretly tracking the money as it moved through a complex web of shell companies and offshore accounts. Marcus thought he was clever, using my signature and credentials to authorize transfers, but he'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'd learned all our father's lessons too. Howard Foster hadn't built Foster Financial by being trusting. He taught us both to watch for betrayal, to always have a backup plan. Keep your evidence close and your enemies closer, he'd say, usually after closing another ruthless deal. The safe in his old office, now Marcus's office, still had our childhood fingerprints on its brass handle. We'd spent hours playing with it as kids, learning its combination, hiding our treasures inside. Marcus thought he knew all its secrets. He was wrong. The night before my arrest, when I knew what was coming, I'd made one final visit to that safe, behind the false back panel that our father had installed decades ago. I placed a small hard drive containing everything I'd gathered over the past 2 years. Every fraudulent transfer Marcus had made, every forged document, every piece of evidence showing his guilt and my innocence. Now, as the marshals led me toward the prison transport van, I thought about that hard drive waiting silently in the dark. 5 years was a long time, but Marcus's kind of greed only grows bolder with success. By the time I got out, there would be so much more evidence to add to my collection. "Stay strong, sis," Marcus called out, his voice carrying across the courthouse steps. "We'll all be waiting for you." I turned back one last time, memorizing his smug expression. "I know you will, brother. I know you will." Prison was exactly as harsh as I'd expected. Danbury Federal Correctional Institution became my new home, my world shrinking to concrete walls and strict routines. But while Marcus thought I was rotting away in a cell, I was watching, waiting, and planning. My cellmate, Teresa, had been a computer programmer before insider trading landed her in prison. She taught me everything she knew about cybersecurity and digital forensics during our long hours in the yard. 5 years is nothing, she said one day as we watched other inmates play basketball, especially if you use the time right. I did use it right. Every letter from home, every newspaper article about Foster Financial's continued success, every smug visit from Marcus, it all went into my mental files. I tracked the company's public records, noting new patterns emerging that matched the old fraud. Marcus visited every month, maintaining the facade of the concerned brother. He'd bring news about the company, about our parents, about his own rising star in the financial world. Each visit was a performance meant to show everyone how much he cared about his poor, misguided sister. "The company's doing better than ever," he told me during one visit, 2 years into my sentence. "Dad's finally retiring, giving me full control." Imagine that, the younger sibling taking charge. I noted the flash of real emotion in his voice. Marcus had always resented being second born, second in line, second in our father's estimation. Now he had everything he'd wanted, built on the foundation of my imprisonment. "Congratulations," I said mildly. "I'm sure you'll do great things." His eyes narrowed slightly at my tone, but he couldn't see past his own triumph to recognize the threat beneath my words. 3 years into my sentence, news came that shook the financial world. Foster Financial was expanding, acquiring smaller firms at an aggressive pace. The business papers praised Marcus's bold leadership, but I saw what others missed. The pattern of fraud had grown, spreading into the newly acquired companies like a virus. Teresa helped me track public records during her computer lab time, building a new digital archive of evidence. "Your brother's getting sloppy," she observed. "Getting bigger means more places to hide money, but it also means more trails to follow." She was right. Marcus's success had made him careless. The same patterns I documented before my arrest were repeating on a larger scale. Fake accounts, inflated numbers, missing funds. all of it carefully hidden from regulators but clearly visible to anyone who knew where to look. 4 years in, our mother died. The guards let me attend the funeral in handcuffs, watched by armed escorts. Marcus gave a moving eulogy about family and legacy, his eyes wet with tears that almost looked real. "Mom never believed you were guilty," he told me afterward, his voice low. "Right until the end, she defended you." "I know," I replied. "She was good at seeing the truth." Something in my voice made him pause, made him really look at me for the first time in years. But whatever doubt flickered across his face was quickly replaced by his usual confidence. "1 more year, sis," he said, straightening his expensive tie. "Then you can come home, start fresh. Maybe there's even a place for you at the company, something entry level, of course." I smiled, thinking of the evidence waiting in our father's old safe, and all the new proof of Marcus's crimes I collected during my imprisonment. "That's very generous of you, brother. I'll definitely be coming back to Foster Financial." He couldn't know that every visit, every smug update about his success, every piece of news about the company's expansion had only strengthened my resolve. The hard drive in the safe wasn't just evidence anymore. It was a ticking time bomb, waiting for my return to detonate. Freedom smelled like rain and car exhaust. I stood outside Danbury Federal Correctional, watching my reflection in Teresa's glasses as she hugged me goodbye. "Remember what we planned," she whispered. "Take your time. Do it right." I'd been released 3 months early for good behavior. Marcus didn't know yet. I'd made sure the notification paperwork was delayed. I needed these 3 months without his watchful eye. My first stop was a small apartment I'd arranged through Teresa's outside contacts. My second was Foster Financial's headquarters. Not to go inside, not yet, but to watch. The building had changed during my imprisonment. New wings, new security, new logos reflecting the company's expansion. I spent a week observing, learning the patterns. Marcus arrived every morning at 8:15 in his Bentley, left every evening around 7. The security desk changed shifts at 6 p.m. The cleaning crew arrived at 8. All the pieces I needed to get back into my father's old office. But first, I had other preparations to make. The evidence I'd gathered during my imprisonment needed to be organized. Teresa had taught me how to build an unbreakable digital trail, one that would stand up to any scrutiny. Every newspaper clipping, every public record, every piece of financial data I collected over 5 years was carefully compiled and cross-referenced. "Your brother's gotten bolder," my lawyer, David Chen, said as he reviewed the files in his office. I'd hired him secretly, using funds I'd hidden before my arrest. "The fraud has grown exponentially. We're looking at billions now, not millions." "Show me," I said, pulling up a chair. David laid out the pattern. After my imprisonment, Marcus had used Foster Financial's resources to acquire smaller firms, then used those companies to hide even larger frauds. The evidence in the safe would prove his original crimes, but what he'd done since then was far worse. "He's not just stealing anymore," David explained. "He's built a massive Ponzi scheme, using new acquisitions to cover the holes in older frauds, moving money between companies so fast that regulators can't keep up." How many people would be affected if it all collapsed? Thousands. Employees, investors, pension funds. He shook his head. "Your brother's created a house of cards that could take down the entire financial sector when it falls." I thought about Marcus's smug visits to prison, his casual cruelty masked as concern. He'd stolen 5 years of my life, but he'd also stolen the futures of countless innocent people. "What's our next move?" David asked. I pulled out the building plans I'd memorized. "First, we get into that safe. Then we go to the SEC with everything, the old evidence and the new." "He'll fight back," David warned. "He has powerful friends now, political connections. Let him fight," I said, thinking of all those prison nights I'd spent planning this moment. "I'm ready." Getting into Foster Financial after hours was easier than expected. I still had friends inside the company, people who remembered my innocence and had watched Marcus's meteoric rise with suspicion. One of them, Sarah Fermet, helped me bypass the new security systems. "Your brother's been on a rampage lately," she whispered as she let me into the service entrance. 3 departments laid off last month, benefits cut across the board. But he just bought another yacht. The night cleaning crew was used to seeing late workers, and my old employee ID, carefully updated by Teresa's contacts, got me past any curious eyes. The executive floor was empty, dark except for the emergency lights. Marcus's office, our father's old office, had been expanded, modernized. But the safe was still there, hidden behind the same fake wood panel. My fingers remembered the combination instantly. Our mother's birthday, followed by the date our father founded the company. The false back panel slid open silently. The hard drive was exactly where I had left it 5 years ago, covered in a thin layer of dust. But when I reached for it, my hand froze. There was something else in the hidden compartment, something new. A folder thick with documents, labeled with our father's distinctive handwriting. Insurance. I grabbed both the hard drive and the folder, my heart pounding. Down the hall, a door opened, the cleaning crew starting their rounds. I slipped out through the emergency stairs, clutching my discoveries close. Back in my apartment, I spread everything out on the kitchen table. The hard drive contained exactly what I remembered, proof of Marcus's original fraud, the evidence that would overturn my conviction. But the folder. My God. I whispered as I read through our father's documents. He'd known about Marcus's crimes even before I did. He'd been gathering his own evidence, building his own case, but he died before he could use it. The next morning, I made 2 calls. The first was to David Chin, telling him about our father's evidence. The second was to Marcus himself. Becca? His voice was shocked. You're not supposed to be out for 3 more months. Good behavior, I said pleasantly. I thought I'd take you up on that job offer. Are you free for lunch? There was a long pause. Of course. The Prime Club at 1. Perfect. Oh, and Marcus, ring your lawyer. I arrived early at the exclusive restaurant, choosing a corner table with a good view of the entrance. At exactly 1 p.m., Marcus walked in with his attorney and 2 other men I recognized as Foster financial executives. Bringing backup, brother? I asked as they sat down. Just some concerned colleagues, Marcus replied smoothly. We're worried about you, Becca. Prison can change people. I smiled, opening my laptop. You have no idea how much. I turned the screen toward them. Let's talk about Dad's hidden compartment in the safe. Marcus's face went perfectly still. His lawyer leaned forward, but I held up a hand. Before anyone speaks, you should know that copies of everything have already been sent to the SEC, the FBI, and 3 separate news organizations. Whatever happens to me, the truth comes out. What truth? Marcus tried to laugh, but his voice cracked slightly. You served your time, Becca. Don't try to shift the blame now. I started playing a video security footage from 5 years ago showing Marcus entering my office late at night, planting the fake documents that would later condemn me. This is just the beginning, I said quietly. I have everything, Marcus. The original fraud, the forged signatures, the fake accounts. And now, thanks to Dad's insurance file, I have proof of what you've done since I've been gone. One of the executives stood up abruptly. I should go. Sit down, Peter, I said, not looking away from Marcus. You're in Dad's files too. All those insider trades you helped Marcus hide, they're about to become very public. The restaurant continued its elegant lunchtime service around us. But at our table, the air was thick with tension. What do you want? Marcus finally asked. First, a full confession clearing my name. Second, immediate resignation from Foster Financial. Third, complete cooperation with federal investigators to ensure that when this house of cards collapses, it doesn't take innocent employees and investors down with it. Marcus's lawyer touched his arm, but he shook it off. And if I refuse? I pulled out a final document, a detailed analysis of Foster Financial's current fraud, showing how Marcus had created a complex Ponzi scheme that would inevitably collapse. Then I release everything immediately. The company fails spectacularly, taking your freedom and reputation with it. Your choice. You destroy our father's legacy, he asked, his voice rising. Everything he built? You destroy his legacy the moment you framed your own sister, I replied calmly. I'm just making things right. What happened next was like watching a building implode in slow motion. Marcus tried to leave. Federal agents were already waiting outside. His colleagues, seeing the evidence, quickly turned against him, offering to cooperate in exchange for leniency. Within hours, Foster Financial's stock was in freefall. Emergency board meetings were called. The SEC announced a formal investigation, and Marcus, finally breaking under the pressure, confessed to everything. I watched from David's office as my brother was led away in handcuffs, just as I had been 5 years ago. But there was no triumph in my heart, only a deep sadness for what could have been. The aftermath was chaotic but controlled. With my help, the authorities were able to untangle Marcus's fraud without destroying the entire company. Most jobs were saved, investments were partially recovered, and Foster Financial survived under new leadership. My conviction was overturned, my record expunged. The press called it a remarkable tale of justice, but they missed the real story. This wasn't about revenge, it was about responsibility. 1 month after Marcus's arrest, I visited him in the same prison where I'd spent 5 years. Why? I asked simply. Why did you do it? He looked older, defeated. I was tired of being second best. Dad always said you were the smart one, the responsible one. I wanted to prove I could be better. And now I understand what Dad really meant. He looked down at his hands. You were better, not because you were smarter, but because you never lost sight of what was right. I left him there, walking out into the sunshine that had been denied to me for so long. Teresa was waiting in the parking lot, now free herself and working as my security consultant. Ready for your first day back? She asked. I nodded. The board have asked me to return as CEO, to help rebuild Foster Financial the right way. The company would be smaller, more ethical, focused on real value rather than quick profits. You know what the hardest part will be? I said as we drove to the office, living up to Dad's real legacy, not the empire he built, but the principles he tried to teach us. And Marcus? He has 15 years to think about those same principles. The Foster Financial building looked different now, its shadows less threatening. As I walked through the lobby, employees nodded respectfully, not because I was Howard Foster's daughter, but because I had fought for justice and won. I paused at my new office, my father's old office. The safe was still there, now empty of secrets but full of possibilities. On the wall, I hung 2 frames, my father's original business license and my overturned conviction paperwork. Together, they told a story not just of fall and redemption, but of the price of integrity and the true meaning of legacy. Welcome back, Ms. Foster, my assistant said, bringing in the morning reports. I smiled, sitting down at my father's desk, my desk now. It's good to be back. Let's get to work. The sun rose over the city, casting long shadows through the office windows. Somewhere in a federal prison, Marcus was beginning his own 5-year journey. But unlike him, I had used my time to build something stronger than revenge. I had built the truth. And the truth, as our father always said, was the best insurance of all.